Kevin is also a creative storyteller using visuals to amplify climate voices globally. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm also seeing in our presence, we have Richard Senkondo, who is very active in this Stop EACOP campaign. I hope we'll be able just to hear from him briefly because he has very valuable insights into this very important projects that we are highlighting. So karibuni sana, gentlemen. And just probably if we start off, let's start by helping our listeners understand the basics of um, what the whole project is about. Maybe if I pose a question to our speakers, Samuel, if we can start with you, in because it actually the project originates from where you're from. In your view, what does the Eco project represent for your country, that is Uganda, and for the region as a whole?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joy, and it's a privilege to be part of this conversation. Like you introduced, my name is Samuel Okulony, working with the Environment Governance Institute based in Uganda, and work with the communities that are impacted by different oil and gas projects within Uganda. So specifically, if you talk about ECO, for the benefit of our listeners and those that might be interacting with the project for the first time, it's one that is set to open up oil and gas fields in Uganda, specifically the upstream projects, that is the Tilenga oil and gas project located in and within Machumu Falls National Park, as well as the Kingfisher project that is located on the shores of Lake Albert. And the EACOP is one that is set to transport crude originating from the western part of Uganda up to Tanga port in Tanzania, covering a distance of 1,443 kilometers. And you can imagine the distance it's going to cover and the areas that it's actually the land take that is currently ongoing and taking from people. So if I'm to speak about what does the EACOP mean, I think it's a time bomb that is waiting to explode within our own backyards. And I speak this specifically as a person from the East African region and as a community within within the East African area, because you find that it's a project that is already characterized by depriving the frontline communities of their right to life. Because if you see a project that is coming up on and saying we are coming in to bring development, but the people it claims to bring development for are impoverished that they cannot even afford a basic meal a day. And it's one of the projects still passing through different key sensitive ecosystems, key economic assets of these two countries. And that is a project that is actually going to continue. Across the East African region, we are impacted by climate change. And to you and me, we have already faced directly with the impact of climate change. In Uganda, the mudslides, the floods, the heat waves are a key characteristic on how we need to adapt better, but also to contribute to mitigating climate change. But a project that is going to worsen climate on the pretext of saying we are going to bring development, that is a time bomb, which I basically, specifically, if you ask me what does the meaning of EACOP, it's basically a time bomb, a climate bomb that is waiting to explode unless we organize ourselves much better than we already now to ensure that we're able to stop this project, stop expansion, and explore better alternatives that the region is endowed with. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving us that a brief insight of the project. I wanted to hear from the perspective of Tanzania, or to get an understanding from Tanzania. Probably as Baraka is still trying to figure out his connection. Richard, I don't know if you can be able to give us a brief insight on this. Naweza kukupatia mic before we hear from Baraka. Probably we get to hear from you briefly, Richard. because you've been deeply involved, even in the grassroots level of this project. Richard, sijui kama unanipata, you can feel free to join the conversation. Oh, Richard, can you hear me? Richard is also an environmental and human rights defender. Sorry, I didn't mention that. And he's also been advocating and speaking about the Stop EACOP project. So I really wanted to hear from him before we move. Yes, Richard, karibu sana. Can go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the previous speaker, Mr. Samuel Okulony, whom I'm working together in the same campaign. So for the case of Tanzania, just as in the case in Uganda, you know, it is only the colonial boundaries actually which are demarcating these two beautiful countries. And the same consequences that are experienced by Ugandans are the same consequences that are experienced by a fellow countrymen in Tanzania. So for the side of Tanzania, EACOP is actually not a grace. This is a bomb. It is a bomb. I can even go to another bomb. Even for the people. So when we say on this Tanzania, we understand that this type has across key sensitive axes. We are here speaking about the Indian Ocean, particularly at the end point of this crude oil pipeline in Tanga, Tanzania, in a place called Chongoleani. In that place, EACOP, in collaboration with Total Energies and the Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation, TPDC, they have cleared about 40 hectares of mangroves. And the scientists understand, even not scientists, those fisher folks understand the potentials of the mangroves forests. These ones, first of all, they normally help to filter the dust from the surface runoffs, but also they act as a buffer, protecting strong heat waves, strong ocean waves that in one way or another might erode the coast, but also harming or distracting communities that are living along the coast or along the shore of the ocean. But we also understand that the mangrove forest, these are the potential breeding sites for the fish, but are also potential living sites for various creatures such as seabirds. But not only that, in Tanzania, also the pipeline cuts across key sensitive game reserves, but are also reserved forest reserves such as Minziro. That is for nature. But when we come to speak about for people, this pipeline has affected countless, more than 80,000 poorer community in a rural part of Tanzania and a few parts in urban areas of Tanzania. So these are the people whose livelihood has been forced to change. They have been forced to move from their previous or ancestral land to new areas far away. These areas, the new areas are located far away from key social services such as the hospitals, such as the schools, and so forth. But also when we say about for the climate, EACOP is typically a bomb because it is going to increase the carbon emission. So the current carbon emission of Uganda and Tanzania, which does not even reach 20 million tons of carbon, will be surpassed by EACOP when the crude oil starts to flow. The amount of carbon emission will be amounting to about 34 million tons of carbon per year. So this is just a global impact. Not only Tanzanians or Ugandans will be affected, but Africa in general, but also the globe. So as we are increasing efforts to adhere to the Paris Agreement, by containing the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we are still seeing African countries which are already vulnerable to adverse impact of climate change are now also increasing efforts to emit carbon emission. And right now, the extractive sector, particularly in gas and oil fields, are now seen as potential sectors of bringing development into the African continent. But while actually we are undermining our own efforts of bringing peace, prosperity, and sustainability by cutting down emission and investing into sustainable and renewable projects. So that's all. But when also I say the bomb, I would love also to speak this maybe later on. We do not know so much. I would speak about the increase in debt, the debt of Tanzania. As the previous Tanzanians, the budget was tabled by the Minister of Finance. So EACOP is also amongst a strategic project in Tanzania. We have heard that Tanzania has borrowed so much. So yet the government of Tanzania has not opened is not open. There is no transparency. We do not know how much has been borrowed and invested into this devastating project. So it is all about full of lies. This project is not bringing any kind of development. It is a bomb, but also it is making people becoming more poverty, but also increasing the debt of the nation. Thanks.
Richard, thank you so much for that expansive highlight. Umeweza kuelezea vizuri but umeguzia muhimu. Samuel, sorry, I'll be jumping in kidogo Kiswahili. I hope you'll be able to understand for the sake of our East African audience. But there's something that Richard umeguzia, which is very important for us to highlight, how the communities have been affected. You've mentioned that more than 80,000 communities have been affected by this project, either by being displaced or in one way affected by this pipeline, especially in Tanzania. What exactly have you seen or heard from these people or these communities on the ground? And probably what do land rights and compensation look like in practice for them? I'd like to hear from the Tanzanian aspect first, Richard, before we hear from Samuel on Uganda.
Very sorry. Looks like I lost you for like past 2. You could come back with your question and I'll be able to respond to it.
Oh, sorry. You can hear me now.
Yes, I can.
Yes. I was asking just for us to go back a little bit so that we can be able to get a clearer picture of how things are on the ground, qua ground. And that is the communities or the people who have been affected directly. And you mentioned that number is very large. More than 80,000 communities.
Hello, I've lost you again.
You've lost me. Sorry, sijui kama Samuel, are you able to hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
You can hear me. Sorry, probably you can tell us about the aspect in Uganda. Then we'll head back to Richard to hear from him.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think for the Ugandan case, I have not just heard or seen, but also felt it. Specifically, is it a Ugandan law, specifically Article 26, vests land rights on the people. That every citizen has a right to own land and property. However, that land can only be taken after payment of prompt, fair, and adequate compensation, but specifically under conditions for public safety, public health, and the public interest. And more than 14,000 households that are impacted by different oil and gas activities in Uganda and Tanzania had the right to own their land. But this is a situation whereby the government comes in to take people's land for the development of what they consider a strategic project. Because I don't think EACOP is even in the public interest, because it basically benefits the interest of the companies. Because the land is basically acquired for Total Energies to do their project, and the majority shareholding is Total with 62% shares, while the government of Uganda has only 15%. But during the process of land acquisition, remember, these are the people that were done assessments in 2018, and the payment rates that were used were for 2018, but they only got money, some of them, later on in 2022, 2023. And all this period in time, they were restricted on what they can be able to use their land on. They were denied access to use or to grow perennial crops, which actually happened to be cash crops. They were denied in terms of user rights, because before even they were given compensation. And any development that they would put on that land would not be compensated. So people could not even repair their own houses because that would not be considered. And this led to massive food insecurity. Because in rural communities, land is life. Without land, you cannot be able to support your own household, even in terms of growing food for consumption, but others to be able to sell. And that is the key characteristic on how the EACOP was able to forcefully acquire people's land, deny them user rights on their own land before even they could pay them, and even pay them with outdated rates, to the extent that they could not replace the land that they lost. I am here having 10 acres of land that you're trying to acquire for your project, but the money you're giving me is not able to buy for me 10 acres. Could be like 5, 6 acres. That is not enough to support a household that was depending on 10 acres of land. And that is a key characteristic that has been, and this is in complete violation of the land laws of Uganda, especially Article 26 of the Constitution, but also on a basic human right. In addition to that, there is also an aspect of free, fair, and informed consent, that people need to be informed of what they are giving out their land for. The instruments that guide all this, basically, they were on paper, but not practically implemented, because people were forcefully asked to sign off, that you even sign papers that you do not understand. At least Kenya, you majority of the people can speak in Kiswahili. It's a different case in Uganda. We have very many tribes that speak their native languages and not unifying language, apart from English, for a few that have gone to school. And this is what they did by bringing in different documentations for people to sign on papers that they do not understand. And it put restrictions on their land that people fail to use them to be able to achieve basic rights for food and income to be able to support their own households. And that has continued up to date, that even before the project has even commenced, people are still demanding for compensation. Imagine, based on this assessment that they were undertaken back in 2018, 2019. Let alone that one. As we speak now, you find that there are different user rights, access to different areas. You find the EACOP itself is actually passing through different sensitive ecosystems that people were depending on for their own user rights. Bogoma Forest is one that people basically go for nature walks, provide tourism activities. They basically, but because of the project, most of these activities have been restricted. And these are areas that are held by government in trust for the people. But now the acquisition of that means that people cannot be able to use them fully, because there's a project that is going to benefit Total Energies, passing through a key ecosystem that is supposed to be benefiting everybody. So it's a characteristic of daylight robbery by the companies holding government at ransom to be able to acquire land for their own interest. And that is basically a characteristic on how Uganda and the people in Uganda have been suffering because of the ECO project. They
Oh,
basically
okay.
came and trying to say, oh, this project is going to respond and bring in development. In the beginning, they basically coming in to give all the kind of promises on that they would bring in better health services, luring people to believe in the thing that maybe this is the development that we have been hoping that we'll be able to get. But day in, day out, they violated each and every commitment that they mentioned. And that is actually why the local communities are organizing against the project. And that's why you find that there's local grassroots resistance towards EACOP.
Samuel, thank you so much for sharing that. Basically, from what I hear, the same issue is rampant in Uganda as it is in Tanzania. And let me throw it to Baraka, has said, unfortunately, he's still having a bit of technical issues, but he's informed me that his colleague is here and he'll be able to speak or give an overview of the situation in Tanzania. Baraka Lenga, I see you share a name. Karibu sana. Probably, if you could just, I don't know if you were able to hear what Samuel was responding to, so that you can be able to give us the overview in Tanzania, especially on these communities. Majority of them who are not really don't have an understanding of how what these documents are, what these documents they're signing mean to them, and they've either been displaced or been affected by this pipeline, and you can find that the compensation is either very little or none for some of them, or the promises that have been given have not been implemented, or you might find some of them. I think as we were doing interviews before, we were being told some of these people from these communities were actually being given documents with very big English or hard words that they're not able to understand what this means for them. So Karibu, and just take us through what the situation is. Oh, sorry, I'm seeing Baraka dropped. Let me see if I can add him back. Let me see if I can add him back, or if he's not able to join, I guess, Richard, I'll just throw it back to you, because you have been on the ground and you know how it is for these communities.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely what you have spoken is typically true on what happened on the ground. So same situation as what happened in Uganda. We had the first evaluation that were done back in 2017 and 2018. And unfortunately, these compensations actually delayed. And I'm confident to say that they were passively delayed just to impoverish the affected communities, or the project affected communities, as in short we call them the PAPs. So the compensation were delayed for 4 good years and 5 good years. The last compensation was done in 2018, and they started receiving the in 2022 and 2023. So it's already 4 or 5 good years. And they just understand that immediately after the first evaluation, when it was done, these people were banned from developing their properties. Just as how Comrade Sam said earlier, after the ban was ensured, these people were not allowed to cultivate perennial crops, which has actually market value. And most of them, these are acacia crops. They were only allowed to cultivate short-term crops that only grow for not more than 5 days. So people were starved automatically. And when we speak about prior and informed consent, it was typically ridiculous on the ground. Just see more than 80% of this pipeline in Tanzania cuts across in rural areas. And we understand the nature of the rural context in Tanzania. Majority of people are still illiterate. And those ones who had an opportunity of going to school, majority of them ended in school. And what actually is the main curriculum, teaching curriculum in Tanzania is just Swahili. People are born in rural areas speaking their native language, and then they learn Swahili as a second language. Most of these documents were given the translator to translate these agreements. And those documents which were put in Swahili, people were given limited time to sign those documents. Those who refused and demanded for their justice or demanded for the prolonged time to read and fully understand or to seek legal support, they were told that if you delay to sign, you will end up losing your compensations. You will not be compensated. And those who actually seemed like not threatened by those words were told just try to go to court. You know, even if you go to challenge the matter to court, you cannot win because this is a government project. And given the nature of our constitution in Tanzania, the land is vested under the strategy of the president. So you cannot question. People were forced to receive very minute compensations, actually, which could not satisfy them or which were not enough to compensate the same properties or the value of the properties that were lost to the project. So this is how the nature was. And when you read careful that the Resettlement Action Plan, the RAP, these project affected persons were entitled to food relief program of 6 months. But when you go to field and have an opportunity to speak to these affected communities, they received the food support, the food ration for not more than 3 times. And that food ration was not equally provided. They were not carrying the number of household dependents you have, because for the last time when I had the interview, what I was informed, they were given 10 kilograms of maize, 10 kilograms of beans, and 5 liters of sunflower. So you can just imagine a really African family. In short, we just understand a household normally minimum has more than 5 members of household. Just imagine you are given 10 kilograms of maize, 10 kilograms of beans, and 5 liters only of sunflower to sustain you for a month. So typically, on my side, it was the project is covered by rampant and massive human rights violation events. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I had also wanted to hear from you because about the women and children in particular, because they are the ones who utapata they are the ones who are affected the most by this project, because you know, they are the ones who most of them, they come from the marginalized communities, and you know, the women, they are left with nothing to fend for their families or their children. But I want us to move to now into the heart of the topic, because we really want to understand if this pipeline is bringing a regional unity or division for the East African community. Samuel, probably if you could tell us, do you think this project is creating a stronger regional cooperation, or is it revealing more fractures and imbalances in East Africa? Because if you look at the project, there are conversations out there that Uganda may not be able to actually really benefit from this project, same as Tanzania, because when the crude oil is exported out of the country, that oil no longer belongs to us as a region. I think even in Tanzania, we've had promises of it will create better jobs, it will create more opportunities out there, so on and so forth. The country is going to develop. But is this project going to create a stronger regional cooperation? Because I wish my Kenyan colleague had joined the conversation. He would have been able to tell us why Kenya actually opted out of this project and left Tanzania and Uganda in it. So Samuel, give us an insight on this, whether you think if it's going to, probably create something stronger. Probably you can also engage each other with Richard and let us know from your different perspectives. before I also invite other people. If you have a question or to any of our speakers concerning the project, please feel free, nyosha mkono, nitakupa mic ili tuweze kujadiliana on the topic.
Thank you very much, Joy. I think looking into the project, if it's a regional, bringing people together, or basically bringing more fractures, I think that what I could say is that I think the only good thing I'm seeing out of the project is that we are able to have a conversation as climate activists, as civil society organizations, speaking about the same thing, that we need to stop this project. Because at least now I can be able to communicate with Richard, I can communicate with comrades from Kenya and say, what do we need to do? We have a challenge ahead of us. But realistically speaking, I think this project is the one bringing in more fractures to already existing bonds that we're trying to build over time. I can assure you the region was more united before the project came in on board. Now the coming of EACOP has brought more divisions, more rifts between the different states, looking into now prioritizing individual interest as opposed to common interest in terms of driving the region towards one development agenda. Just look at the EACOP itself. One running from the Tanzania, from Uganda, the western part, going to Tanga port. It is going to pass on the basin of Lake Victoria. This is an ecosystem, this is a lake shared between the three East African countries. Any impact of potential oil spill, we have seen oil spills across the world, even in most developed states. And the project is going to pass within this basin. Any leakage from this oil will definitely impact the whole East African region. Already tensions are already coming up on board. How are we going to address this kind of impact? First of all, do we even need this oil? Because the region is not heavily dependent on that. That's why they're trying to build a pipeline, take it out, because it doesn't respond completely to energy needs. So it's not something that is responding to the development needs of a region that would be trying to embrace and say, oh, this is what we need, or we're going to substitute import and what. But we are basically being used as a petrol station to power up Europe and other countries where this oil is going into, and will be left in that kind of darkness. And yet we have better alternatives that we as a region can be able to take. Lake Victoria, any potential leakage, Mark, you remember it is linked with the River Nile, that the northern part of Africa will most likely feel the impact of the EACOP. And this could bring in regional and the country-based tensions, and potential even lead to a war. Because if you're going to pollute the water that the country is depending on, and you're basically doing it because of your own interest, then you're not going to have, the country is not going to come clapping their hands and saying, oh, we know that you're going to try to develop this and that and that. The DRC is already part of the conversation, and they're part of the East African community. And the oil, partly that is going to be transported through EACOP, is coming in from Lake Albert, partly which is shared within Uganda and DRC. Already there are tensions in that area. Deployment of the military, that is actually torturing people, restricting access to fishing rights. Imagine somebody who has lived all his life as a fisherman, and all of a sudden you're stopping him from going to the lake to fish and telling him, we're giving you land somewhere else, you go and start agriculture. You inherited the skill of fishing from your great-grandparents, and now you're told you can no longer fish here. Basically, and the same thing, restricting access to your culture, your ancestry, and trying to say, we are trying to do everything hook or crook to ensure that they're able to get the oil out of the country. So those tensions are already brewing. We are already looking into how the region is basically looking into what is our stake. What are we going to get? Each country saying we need to negotiate for our own. Tanzania is saying to pass in here. The activists can no longer freely go into one other country, because they'll be saying, oh, you're fighting your government in Uganda, you're trying to stop development, you cannot cross freely to another state. The other one cannot be, you cross with a lot of prying eyes. What have you come to do? This was all not there before the EACOP came in. And instead of the region which was united, thinking closely, working in together, the project has come in with the interest of the oil company to serve their interest and breaking the states that were united together apart. Q, like I said in the beginning, the shareholding, Total has a majority shareholder in the EACOP. But as countries within Uganda and Tanzania, we have 15% shareholding within the within EACOP. So if they make any kind of profit, they, of course, it will go with the company. The production sharing agreements are kept in lock and key. Even when they commit to being a part of the EITI, Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, they never disclose all these kind of agreements for the public to scrutinize them, to really hold them accountable. So it is one project that has come in to cause a lot of division, a lot of rifts in a region that was united. And it's a high time that this project is stopped in totality and the region can continue to develop in a sustainable way.
Richard, as Samuel believes that this project has actually brought more division in the East African region instead of creating stronger ties, do you support this? Do you also believe that badala ya kuunganisha Kenya, Uganda na Tanzania, actually it has created a rift and is going to create a larger rift as the project continues or is implemented?
Yes, I strong agree and with Samuel with all of the factors that he has tabled, and just to add on top of that, and maybe we forgot to share this. The equity sharing this project was previously a $5 billion US, and now it has just increased. It is almost about $60 billion US. So this translates that the common goal actually in East Africa was to drive towards economic development, but the two countries actually will be stranded backward. That is Tanzania and Uganda, because we shall end up paying the debt. So it was $5 billion. Right now, it has gone to $6 billion. So which means that their contributing amounts has now increased. So Tanzania and Uganda will somewhat be beaten far away by Kenya in terms of development, because some years here, like 25 years to come, these countries will be tied into the grave of debt crisis. So, but also other things, just like what Sam said, we have key ecosystems that we are sharing, particularly maybe for the case of the Indian Ocean, we are sharing between Tanzania and Kenya. So should any kind of oil spills happen on the side of Tanzania, those people at the northern part of Tanzania, which is Kenya, will not be in good arguments with the side of Tanzania. Same applies to the Lake Victoria Basin, the Great Lake Victoria Basin. Three countries, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda, will be affected. But we are only speaking about the East Africa. How far are we caring about our brothers and sisters in the northern part of Tanzania, who depends so much on the Nile River for their key source of their livelihood? They are also going to be impacted with the oil spills that will be coming from this disastrous project. Thanks.
Thank you. Richard, sorry, I actually just wanted to thank you for giving us that, the whole Tanzanian aspect of how the project is impacting and affecting the country and the region. We were supposed to hear from Baraka, but unfortunately, as you know, Twitter has been an issue in Tanzania, so that's why he's been having connection issues, but he's following the conversation well, and hopefully soon we'll be able to hear from him because connection kidogo ni tatizo. Samuel, there's something you had mentioned that I want us to bring our attention to probably before we wind up the conversation. You asked a very important question. Do we really need this oil? And I want to bring in a brief discussion on that. Is probably if you or Richard can tell us what other alternatives exist, and can we possibly imagine an energy transition in East Africa without projects like EACOP, for example, and probably to tie into that, as we are seeing movements like Stop EACOP happening all over. How can the youth be tapped in more into shaping this future pathways, and also the civil society, if I may ask? So what other alternatives can we look in?
Yes, I think.
Thank you. Let me go first, and then you will come later. You will come after me. Quickly, thanks. Actually, we don't need this project. With the fact that it's a fossil fuel proliferation, the matters of human rights violation, climate change, and the deterioration of nature, as I spoke earlier. So what are the alternatives? For the Stop EACOP campaign, we say that we stop the pipeline, but we have brought the alternatives. And our alternatives, first of all, is investment in renewable energy. And when you invest in renewable energy, we should make sure that we decentralize the energy system in Tanzania and Uganda, not only in Tanzania and Uganda, but in the whole African continent. Because even when we continue the proliferation of fossil fuels and being dependent into fossil fuel projects, these projects are owned by multinational corporations which are driven by capitalist interests, which end up benefiting capitalist countries and a few elites in our countries who see that gap and they utilize from that. While the rest, or the large population, the large part of population remain impoverished. So we want the decentralized system of energy in our countries where communities are empowered to own them, to manage them. When we have decentralized systems of energy, we will witness massive employment opportunities for youth, which are actually currently struggling in the whole African continent. People are graduating, but there are no jobs. When we have decentralized systems, we shall also be able to do away with serious problems of power outages. In my country, problems of power outages are typically massive. And in a few months, I think it was last month, our top politicians lied to us that currently we are producing abundantly, that we have excess electricity, which we are even able to sell to our neighbor countries, such as Zambia and Malawi. Unfortunately, in the last 2 or 3 months, we were told that we are in the plans of purchasing electricity from Ethiopia via Kenya. So these are still the problems of centralized systems of energy. This high opportunity for CSOs and the youth to campaign and the investment into renewable energies. And when we get that renewable energy sources, we must ensure that they become decentralized. They can be owned communally. We shall be in a good position to do away with serious problems that are challenging Africa, particularly a burden of bills, where we are purchasing electricity tokens at high prices. There are various number of taxes, number of charges in the case of my country. House levy, I don't know, rural area levies. There are a lot of charges actually, of which the only alternative is just to have the centralized system of energy. When you have the centralized system of energy, as I said earlier, problems of power outage power shortage will be done away. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Asante. Before we hear from Samuel and get a parting shot, Baraka has also shared an insight with me in response to the issue of alternatives and whether we can do away with the oil. And he says, yes, we can and we must. Tanzania has more than 3,000 hours of sunshine per year. If just a fraction of that solar potential was harnessed, we could power every village and small business. Investing in renewables would not only provide cleaner energy, it would provide more jobs, more ownership, and more resilience. So he also adds by saying the ECO project is projected to create only 5,000 direct jobs during construction and less than 500 permanent jobs thereafter. Because if you look at the reality, the jobs will be given or will be rather available during the construction phase. But what about after? What will happen to the lives of these people? So he also, Baraka also adds, in contrast, investing in decentralized renewable energy in East Africa could generate up to 1.9 million jobs by 2030, according to Power for All and the IRENA, that's International Renewable Energy Agency. Baraka also adds by saying in Tanzania alone, expanding solar mini grids and clean cooking could create 150,000 new youth jobs over the next 5 years. Just to briefly recap what Baraka is trying to say, that there are way more and big opportunities that lie if this project is actually not implemented, or if we actually focus on other alternatives that are out there. So as probably we wind up, Samuel, we could hear from you about alternatives and your parting shots.
Thank you. And great, my comrade from Tanzania, for the insights. You find that a just energy transition is happening, and we as East African community must embrace it, or else we'll be left in a forced lock-in because of this mass EACOP and the Tilenga and the Kingfisher projects, which are actually trying to get the oil. You find the region is one that is blessed with abundance of resources. Look at a country, a tiny country in Europe called Netherlands. They have more installed solar capacity than the entire Africa, but the entire Africa has more solar potential than the entire Europe. That's a paradox. We're investing in areas that are not, you don't need to invest in. Imagine if the investment in EACOP was targeted towards investment in solar energy in Africa and off-grid solar that would be able to support a household solar needs. Then that would be better development, because Machumu, it's an area where we have a competitive advantage, and we need to speak the language where we have a competitive advantage. There are other sectors, fishing industry, agriculture, which areas can be able to better thrive within the region, but with better climate. But climate needs to be good to be able to ensure that agriculture is able to sustain itself. But investing in COP will mean that agriculture will be dying, and yet agriculture is the backbone of our region. It's very important that we understand that Africa as a continent, East Africa as a region, we cannot catch up with the rest of the world in terms of development if we follow the same path that they followed, especially, of course, in terms of the fossil fuel and the rest. We need to be able to invest in an energy of the future, and that will be able to help us catch up with the rest of the world. There's a transition already happening in developed world. We need to be able to capture that kind of development and not go through a pathway that is polluting, dangerous, and outdated. And that would put us into a lock-in, but also widen our own debt. That will push us more into poverty while other regions are developing with better clean energy. So as I conclude, it's very important that our leaders, our youth, take charge of our future, we have a responsibility to ensure that we are able to inherit a better future than the current rush that the companies and the current leadership is actually trying to put us into. So we need to take charge of our future, ensure that we are able to do things that will be able to push us into a better sustaining future than we are currently in. And we can be able to do it. We have the time, we have the energy, we are educated, and we can be able to do it. And I believe in the power of the youth. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for that. And unfortunately, we have to conclude our conversation there. Of course, this conversation does not end there, but it's something that we are continuing to unpack and create an understanding about what is going on and why we should be concerned about this project, not just as East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and also why we need to bring the international attention to this project. I want to thank our speakers, Baraka, Samuel. Kevin sent his regards. He could not be able to join the conversation tonight, but definitely next time he'll be able to give his insights. At least we hear from a Kenyan perspective. And I'm also grateful for sharing your powerful reflections into this project. As I had mentioned at the beginning, Mwanzo TV has been working on a special project about the EACOP, where we've done a series of interviews and explainers. We've done one with Baraka here. We've done one with climate and environmental activists from Kenya, who have just been able to let us know why it's also important for us as a region, even as Kenyans, to be tapped into this project and have a good understanding about it. We've also done one with Zaki Mamdu, who is very at the forefront of the Stop EACOP campaign. So our aim is to just provide a balanced view of the impact of this pipeline, because we have also tried to engage some of the stakeholders of the project to give us an understanding of what is happening, and even from the government's perspective. I'm seeing there are requests to speak, but unfortunately for today we must end the conversation here. But like I said, it does not end here. We are still continuing to shed light on this, and we'll be able to continue giving you more of these explainers and more of these conversations, so that even those in Tanzania can be able to understand. Because as I understand, there are not many platforms that are giving people this basic education on this project, or what this project means for the country. So if you head over to our YouTube channel, we have two channels, that is Mwanzo TV and Mwanzo TV Plus. Mwanzo TV Plus covers content basically in Kiswahili, and that is for the Tanzanian audience, and Mwanzo TV covers content in English for the regional audience. So our YouTube channel Mwanzo TV Plus is where we are highlighting the East African Crude Oil Pipeline project for the Tanzanian audience, so that they can understand what is happening. So if you'll be able to head to our YouTube channel under the playlist Mradi wa Bomba la Mafuta la Afrika Mashariki, that is EACOP in Kiswahili, we've done and we're continuing to do a series of explainers. So if you have anything, probably if you've been know someone or out there who's been able to document some of these things, even what the communities on ground are saying, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be able to highlight that, whether in Kenya, Uganda, or Tanzania. We'll be able to highlight that under the project. So we'll be picking up this conversation again next time, where we'll still unpack more issues to address and understand from the project. So let's keep asking hard questions, as we've heard from our speakers tonight. The youth need to be more tapped into what this project means, because basically it affects their future. Let's keep amplifying community voices, and let's keep fighting for a future that works for both the people and the planet. On behalf of Mwanzo TV, I've been your host, Joy Chepto. Once again, thank you for joining the conversation tonight. And we'll be picking up, as I said, we'll be picking up this conversation. Please share this conversation. Please follow our speakers and keep the conversation alive. Thanks again for joining, and have a good